Welcome back guys. So in this tutorial we'll be learning about file permissions. So quickly coming to our Kali terminal, first let's check which directory we are in. So we are inside Kryptonite. Now let's do ls. So we can see that there are a lot of stuff here, the directories and a file. So how to differentiate between them and see their file permissions? To list all the contents here, do ls-l and enter. So -l basically show all the details of the files and the directories that we have. The differentiating point between the file and the directory is this. The first part, if it is a directory, a D will be present there, and if it's a file, a hyphen or a dash will be present here. So this was basically how to differentiate between a file and a directory. Now what is this other stuff? rw dash, r dash. So let's learn about this. So this thing is divided into three parts. The first part, the second part, and finally the third part. So three things belong to this first part, the next three things belong to second part, and the last three things belong to the third part. Now what are these parts actually? The first part we talked about was the permissions of the user on a particular file. The second part is the permission of a group on a particular file. And the third part is for everyone else apart from users and group. So I have used this color coding so that you can remember easily. The first set of permission belongs to the user, second set of permissions belong to the group, and the third set of permissions belong to others. So in this case, let's consider this file test.txt. This will display the user who owns the file. This will be the group who owns the file. So what permissions does user have? R stands for read, W stands for write, and X stands for execute. So this is the user, and the first three parts belong to the user permission. So the user has read and write permissions. Now if I say what permissions does Kryptonite group have on test.txt. So we'll go to the second part of permissions which belong to the group. So it just have read permission. And if there are any other users or group, for example, let's say alpha is another user, so that will fall into others category. Now if you're logged into this as alpha, you will just have read permissions. You can't write anything to this. Now if at some point of time we want to change the permissions, how can we do that? So just keep this scheme in your mind. 4 belongs to read permission, 2 is write permission, 1 is for execute, and 0 means no permission. Now let's say we want to give read and execute permissions to a file. So read and execute is 4 plus 1. So that becomes 5. If I have to give to a file a permissions of read and write, I'll give 4 plus 2 equal to 6. Now let's see a small demonstration. The command that we will be using to change permissions is chmod followed by the permissions we want to give and then the file name. So this will be the format, right? Now the file name in our case will be test.txt. If we see carefully, read and write is equal to 6. So we want to give read, write and execute permissions to the user, right? So read is 4, write is 2 and execute is 1. So 4 plus 2 plus 1 equals to 7. So we will give 7 here. We want to give read and write permissions to the group. And read is 4, write is 2. So that becomes 4 plus 2 equal to 6. And only read permission to others. So read is 4. We will press 4 and hit enter. Now if we do ls-l, we can see that permissions have been changed here. So we gave 7, which is read, write and execute. The first set belongs to the user, which is Kryptonite. The second part 6 means read and write. The second part is read and write, which belongs to the group. And the third part is, and the third set of permissions, which is simply read permission, is equal to 4 and it belongs to others. Like if there is any other user, like we took the example of alpha, so that will have just read permissions. So there is another way to change the file permissions. Let's say we want to give execute permissions to others part. So if we followed the previous procedure, we would have done chmod 7, 6, and if we want to give read and execute permissions to others group, that means 4 is for read and 1 is for execute, which means 5, and test.txt. This is what we would have done earlier. But now if we want to give execute permissions to others part, what we can do is we can write O, which means others, plus, and we will give X. So this will give execute permissions to others and hit enter. Now if we see, the third part now also has an execute permission. Also, if we want to take away certain permissions, what we can do is the same command, and instead of plus we can write minus. So simply by understanding we can guess that this would take away the executive permissions from the others, and hit enter. As you can see that X has been removed from here, hence the executable permissions have been removed. So that's it for this tutorial. Thank you.